She gave away her billion-dollar identity and spent one freezing night as a homeless woman, hoping to find a single stranger with a kind heart. The only person who shared his last sandwich was America's most feared mafia king, and neither of them knew that before sunrise, a betrayal would force them into a war that could destroy both of their empires forever. By sunrise, Evelyn Carter could buy half of Manhattan. By midnight, she would be sitting on a frozen sidewalk, starving, shaking, and realizing that without her diamonds, her name, and her empire, the world did not even see her as human. New York City was buried under a brutal winter sky, the kind of cold that turned every breath into smoke and every streetlight into a lonely halo. Inside the glass tower of Carter Holdings, Evelyn was known as the 27-year-old billionaire queen who never lost control. Her face appeared on magazine covers, her decisions moved markets, and powerful men lowered their voices when she entered a room. But that morning, standing alone in her private penthouse above Central Park, Evelyn looked at her reflection and felt nothing but emptiness. She had everything people worshipped, yet she no longer trusted a single smile around her. Every handshake felt purchased. Every compliment sounded rehearsed. Every act of loyalty came attached to money, fear, or ambition. So, before the city fully woke, Evelyn did something reckless. She removed her diamond earrings, locked away her designer coat, smeared pale makeup beneath her eyes, and dressed herself in torn boots, an oversized gray coat, and a faded scarf that made her look like a poor homeless woman no one would recognize. For one day she wanted the truth. Not the truth money created. The real truth. She wanted to know whether kindness still existed when nobody knew she was Evelyn Carter. At first, confidence carried her through the streets. She walked past luxury stores where she had once spent more in an hour than most people earned in a year. But no doors opened for her now. A restaurant host wrinkled his nose before she could ask for soup and told her to leave before customers complained. A woman in a fur coat clutched her purse as if Evelyn were danger itself. Two rich men laughed as they passed, one muttering that people like her ruined the city. With every insult, fear replaced the power she had worn like armor. By afternoon, her stomach cramped from hunger. She stood outside a bakery, staring at golden bread behind glass, her heart pounding with shame she had never known. When she reached for the door, a security guard stepped in front of her and blocked the entrance. "Move along," he said coldly. She tried to explain she only needed water, but he grabbed her arm and pushed her back into the wind. Not hard enough to injure, only hard enough to remind her that without money she had no control, no name, no place. The sidewalk blurred beneath her eyes. She had spent years believing respect was earned through intelligence, discipline, and strength. Now she understood the crueler truth. Money did not create respect. It created performance. Evening fell like a black curtain. Snow began drifting through the streets, soft and merciless. Evelyn sat near an alley wall, her fingers numb inside torn gloves, her breath trembling. Taxis rushed past. Couples hurried into warm restaurants. No one looked close enough to see the woman behind the disguise. No one saw the billionaire. No one saw the lonely girl beneath her empire. She lowered her head, almost fainting, when a shadow stopped beside her. A man in a black coat sat quietly on the curb, close enough for warmth but far enough not to frighten her. He carried no arrogance, no pity, no disgust. Only silence. His face was partly hidden beneath the collar of his coat, but his presence carried something dangerous, something controlled, something that made the winter itself seem to step back. He opened a paper wrapper and revealed one sandwich. Without asking her name, without demanding gratitude, he divided it into two pieces. Then he gave her the larger half. Evelyn stared at it, stunned. "No one should sleep hungry," he said in a low whisper. For the first time all day she felt safe. She did not know this stranger was Adrian Vale, America's most feared mafia king, a man whose word could start a war, whose enemies vanished from boardrooms, whose empire survived on loyalty, betrayal, power, and silence. She only knew that his coat blocked the wind, his voice steadied her heart pounding, and when a drunk stranger across the street stared too long, Adrian's eyes lifted with lethal calm. "She's under my protect," he murmured. Evelyn's breath caught. Then even softer he said, "Mine?" Before she could understand the meaning, 3 black SUVs rolled to the curb. Several armed men stepped out and surrounded the mysterious stranger. The freezing silence on the sidewalk lasted only a few seconds, yet to Evelyn it felt strangely peaceful. The stranger beside her showed no fear despite the black SUVs that had surrounded him. Their doors opened in perfect synchronization, and several sharply dressed men stepped out, their movements disciplined rather than reckless. They did not raise their voices. They simply formed a quiet circle around the man in the black coat, waiting for a single command. The air itself seemed to shift. Evelyn immediately realized this was no ordinary businessman. The stranger slowly stood, brushed a trace of snow from his sleeve, and looked at the men with complete control. There was no panic in his expression, no urgency in his breathing. His calmness was more intimidating than anger could ever be. One of the men lowered his head respectfully before speaking in a careful tone. "Boss, we searched every route. The signal came from inside our own network." The stranger gave only a slight nod, as if he had expected those words long before tonight. His name was Adrian Moretti. To the public, Adrian Moretti was a 34-year-old billionaire shipping magnate whose cargo fleets connected continents and whose investments shaped international trade. Financial magazines praised his discipline, governments respected his business influence, and the media admired the quiet billionaire who avoided interviews. Very few people ever questioned how his empire expanded so quickly. The truth existed only behind closed doors. Adrian was the hidden king of the largest East Coast mafia empire, a criminal organization so organized that even powerful rivals preferred negotiation over confrontation. His influence stretched through ports, logistics companies, financial institutions, and private security firms. Yet unlike the legends whispered about him, Adrian was ruled by one code that nobody inside his organization dared ignore. The innocent were never to be harmed. Money could be recovered. Business could be rebuilt. Power could be reclaimed. But innocence, once destroyed, could never return. Every member serving under Adrian understood another law even more clearly. Loyalty was sacred. Betrayal erased every privilege a person had ever earned. There were no second chances for those who sold the empire from within. Tonight, Adrian had deliberately dismissed his armored convoy and traveled through New York alone. The lonely walk, the simple black coat, even the ordinary sandwich had all been part of a carefully designed plan. Intelligence suggested someone close to him had been leaking confidential movements to an unknown enemy. Adrian wanted the traitor to believe he was vulnerable. Hidden several blocks away, his trusted bodyguards silently observed every street through discreet communication devices, waiting for his signal but refusing to interfere unless absolutely necessary. Evelyn listened without fully understanding the scale of what surrounded her. She had expected the mysterious stranger to protect himself first. Instead, Adrian glanced toward her before speaking another command. "Move her somewhere warm." One bodyguard immediately stepped forward with a heavy winter blanket, but Adrian lifted one finger, stopping him. "Not yet. She stays where she feels safe." The man instantly obeyed. Evelyn looked at Adrian in disbelief. Even while standing inside obvious danger, surrounded by men discussing betrayal inside an invisible criminal empire, his first concern had been a stranger everyone else had ignored. The contradiction unsettled her. She had spent years meeting wealthy executives who donated millions only when cameras were watching. Yet this feared man quietly shared his only meal with someone he believed was homeless. Her heart pounding refused to slow. One of Adrian's advisors stepped closer. "Boss, we should leave immediately." Adrian calmly shook his head. "If someone wants me tonight, they will reveal themselves." The words settled over the street like ice. At that moment, Evelyn noticed something unusual. Every instinct told her to disappear before trouble arrived. She had every opportunity to quietly slip into the crowd. Instead, she remained exactly where she was. Something inside her refused to abandon the man who had shown her kindness when the entire city had turned away. Adrian noticed. Most people ran from uncertainty. This woman remained despite knowing nothing about him. There was fear in her eyes, but courage stood beside it. She neither begged for protection nor demanded explanations. She simply stayed. For the first time in many years, Adrian felt genuine respect growing inside him. He looked at her with quiet curiosity. "You should leave." Evelyn slowly shook her head. "You shared your food when nobody else would." The answer surprised him more than any business negotiation ever had. A faint smile almost appeared before disappearing again. Perhaps this woman was stronger than she realized. Perhaps she saw people before titles. Neither of them noticed the tiny red reflection dancing across the icy pavement several rooftops away. Then it climbed silently upward. It stopped directly over Adrian Moretti's chest. One distant sniper bullet was already on its way. Time seemed to freeze as the tiny crimson dot settled over Adrian's chest. Evelyn had never faced anything like this before, but instinct moved faster than thought. Her heart pounding echoed inside her ears as she noticed the strange reflection shifting across his black coat. Without stopping to question herself, she lunged forward, wrapped both hands around his arm, and pulled him with every ounce of strength she had. The two of them stumbled behind the thick concrete entrance of an abandoned subway ventilation structure just as a deafening crack echoed somewhere above the rooftops. The impact struck the stone wall instead, sending fragments of ice and concrete into the freezing air. For several endless seconds neither of them spoke. Evelyn's breath came in uneven waves while Adrian stared at her with complete disbelief. Every calculation he had made for tonight had failed to predict one impossible variable. A woman who believed she was homeless had risked her own life to save a stranger. The sudden movement had spared something far more valuable than Adrian expected, yet a sharp piece of shattered concrete had grazed his side before they reached cover. The wound was not deep, but dark stains slowly spread across his shirt beneath the black coat. Adrian barely reacted. Years of discipline had taught him to ignore discomfort, but Evelyn immediately noticed the growing stain. Fear flashed across her face. She quickly removed her worn winter coat, tore a long strip from its inner lining with trembling hands, and carefully pressed the fabric against the injury. "I'm sorry if this hurts," she whispered, refusing to remove pressure despite her freezing fingers. Adrian remained perfectly still. No expensive emergency team. No luxury medical kit. Just a woman everyone else had ignored trying desperately to protect someone she believed was an ordinary man. Her hands shook from exhaustion and cold, yet she never complained. "What are you doing?" Adrian asked quietly. "You helped me when no one else would," Evelyn answered. "Now it's my turn." The simplicity of her answer unsettled him more than the attack itself. People usually stayed close to Adrian because of fear, wealth, or ambition. Others hoped to gain influence, power, or protection through him. This woman wanted nothing. She never asked his name, never searched his pockets, never demanded a reward. She acted because kindness came naturally to her. Adrian silently admired a strength far greater than physical courage. She still believed compassion mattered in a city that had almost erased it. Within minutes, hidden surveillance teams confirmed the attacker had disappeared into the maze of rooftops. Adrian discreetly signaled his distant security detail not to approach. Whoever had organized the attack still believed he was alone, and that illusion remained useful. Evelyn looked toward him with concern. "Do you have family?" Adrian hesitated before offering a quiet lie. "I work at one of the shipping warehouses by the harbor. Nothing important. My co-workers will think I simply missed my shift." The answer sounded ordinary enough. Evelyn accepted it without suspicion. She had spent the entire day discovering how quickly appearances deceived people. She had no reason to imagine the calm man beside her ruled an invisible empire. The freezing night grew harsher, making every passing minute more dangerous. Evelyn glanced inside her nearly empty wallet before making a decision that surprised even herself. "I know a tiny motel nearby," she said softly. "It isn't nice, but it's warm." Adrian studied her carefully. "You barely know me. I know enough." An hour later they reached a worn brick motel tucked between old warehouses and narrow side streets. The room smelled faintly of old coffee and fresh detergent. The wallpaper had faded long ago, but the heater still worked. Evelyn placed the room key on the small table before leaving again despite the bitter cold. Adrian watched from the window as she crossed the street to a neighborhood grocery store. Several minutes later she returned carrying 2 simple sandwiches, bottled water, and hot soup. She counted every dollar twice before paying, leaving only a few worn bills in her purse. She smiled as she handed him the larger meal. "I wasn't very hungry anyway." Adrian immediately recognized the lie. She had spent nearly everything she possessed on someone she believed earned an ordinary warehouse salary. Something shifted deep inside him. Money had never impressed Adrian Moretti. Loyalty did. Watching Evelyn quietly sacrifice her last dollars without expecting anything in return awakened a promise he had not spoken in years. He looked at her sleeping peacefully in the chair after exhaustion finally overcame her. "So long as I breathe," he whispered so quietly only the silence could hear, "you are mine to protect." His eyes then drifted toward the frosted motel window. Across the street, a hooded figure stood beneath a broken street lamp, pretending to read a newspaper while watching only one room. Watching Evelyn. Before dawn painted New York in shades of gray, Adrian quietly left the motel while Evelyn remained asleep beside the small heater. She looked peaceful for the first time since he had met her, wrapped in a worn blanket that barely kept the winter cold away. Adrian stood watching her for a brief moment before stepping outside. He had promised himself that he would protect her, but promises meant nothing without answers. Too many impossible details surrounded the woman who claimed to have nothing. Her courage was unusual, her manners reflected careful education, and even in hardship she carried herself with quiet dignity. None of it matched the story she appeared to be living. Across the street, one discreet signal brought two trusted members of Adrian's intelligence division out of the shadows. They had remained hidden throughout the night, following his instructions without question. Adrian spoke only one sentence. "I want everything." Within hours, encrypted files, financial records, surveillance archives, and international databases began flowing into a secure operations center controlled by Adrian's empire. His investigators were the finest money could assemble, experts at uncovering secrets that governments often failed to find. Yet what appeared on the largest monitor left every analyst speechless. The woman sleeping inside the motel was not homeless. She was Evelyn Carter, founder and majority owner of Carter Dynamics, one of America's largest technology companies. Her innovations powered financial networks, medical research systems, and advanced artificial intelligence used across several continents. Her personal fortune exceeded billions of dollars, placing her among the wealthiest women in the country. Newspapers called her the youngest technology queen in America. World leaders requested meetings months in advance. Silence settled across the room. Even Adrian rarely experienced genuine surprise. For the first time in years, he simply stared at Evelyn's photograph beside the financial reports. "So she was hiding from the world," he murmured. One investigator looked confused. "Boss, why would someone with this level of power choose to sleep in a rundown motel?" Adrian continued reading until he reached a confidential interview never published publicly. It contained handwritten notes from Evelyn's private assistant describing her growing disappointment with success, her distrust of admiration purchased by wealth, and her desire to discover whether genuine kindness still existed beneath society's polished surface. The pieces finally connected. She had disguised herself as someone forgotten because she wanted to test humanity itself. She had willingly stepped away from unimaginable luxury just to learn whether compassion survived where cameras and money could not reach. Adrian slowly closed the file. For the first time in many years, the corner of his mouth lifted into a genuine smile. It was small, almost invisible, yet everyone in the room noticed it. He finally understood her. His empire had given him absolute control over markets, rivals, and fear, yet it had never protected him from loneliness. Evelyn's billions had surrounded her with admiration, but not trust. They had traveled completely different roads only to arrive at the same empty destination. Both had discovered that wealth could purchase attention but never sincere loyalty. Back inside the motel, Evelyn quietly awakened, unaware that the greatest secret she had ever hidden no longer belonged to her alone. Adrian returned carrying warm coffee and breakfast exactly as an ordinary warehouse worker might. He chose not to reveal what he had learned. Instead, he simply watched her smile with quiet gratitude over something as simple as fresh bread. The silence between them no longer felt awkward. It felt safe. Neither needed expensive words. Their conversations became softer, longer, and more honest. Evelyn admitted she feared living inside a world where everyone expected something from her. Adrian spoke carefully about losing faith in people without revealing the true weight of his responsibilities. Every shared moment brought them unexpectedly close, not through grand promises but through quiet understanding. For the first time in years, both of them felt their guarded hearts beginning to breathe freely again. But secrets never remained buried forever. Far across the city, inside a luxury penthouse overlooking Manhattan, an encrypted photograph appeared on a private screen. It showed Evelyn entering the motel beside Adrian. Another report confirmed her identity beyond doubt. A billionaire worth billions. Traveling without security. Hidden beside an unknown man. The room fell silent before one voice calmly whispered, "She has become the perfect target." Within minutes, plans for a massive ransom operation quietly began taking shape. Completely unaware of the growing danger surrounding her, Evelyn stepped outside the motel that afternoon to buy coffee. 5 minutes later, Adrian returned from a phone call. The room was empty. Evelyn Carter had disappeared. Adrian stood motionless inside the empty motel room, every detail registering with terrifying precision. Evelyn's coffee cup still released thin streams of steam. Her scarf rested neatly over the chair exactly where she had left it. The front door had not been forced open, and there were no signs of panic or struggle. She had vanished within minutes. His heart pounding remained hidden beneath an expression of absolute control, but every member of his security team recognized the dangerous silence settling around him. Within the hour, surveillance footage from nearby streets began arriving inside Adrian's private command center. Cameras revealed Evelyn walking toward the corner cafe before a luxury delivery van quietly stopped beside the sidewalk. Seconds later, the vehicle disappeared into city traffic. No chaos. No witnesses. Only perfect planning. Adrian watched the recording 3 times before another encrypted report reached his desk. The route had been leaked from inside his own organization. A trusted underboss had secretly sold Evelyn's location. The room fell silent. No accusation hurt Adrian more than betrayal. Rival families could challenge his empire. Competitors could threaten his business. Those battles belonged to ordinary life. But disloyalty inside his own circle destroyed the very foundation upon which everything had been built. The investigation moved quickly. Encrypted financial transfers connected the missing route information to Victor Romano, an underboss who had served Adrian for nearly 11 years. Victor had accepted a fortune from the rival Blackridge syndicate in exchange for Evelyn Carter's location. They believed holding America's billionaire technology queen would buy influence greater than any shipment, territory, or political alliance. Adrian slowly closed the report. "Loyalty," he said quietly, "has always been the only currency that matters." No one answered. Across every port, warehouse, office, and private terminal belonging to the Moretti Empire, confidential orders spread before sunset. Every business operation paused. Every trusted captain returned to headquarters. Every communication channel switched into emergency protocol. The empire was no longer preparing for negotiations. It was preparing for war. Yet Adrian's commands surprised everyone. No innocent neighborhoods. No public panic. No unnecessary destruction. "We recover Evelyn. Nothing else matters." His people obeyed without hesitation because they understood the difference between revenge and purpose. Adrian did not rule through fear alone. He ruled through discipline. Even in moments of overwhelming anger, control remained stronger than emotion. Far from Manhattan, Evelyn awakened inside an abandoned coastal estate overlooking the Atlantic. The windows were reinforced, the exits monitored, and several frightened captives occupied neighboring rooms. Some had been held for business leverage, others for confidential negotiations. The atmosphere carried exhaustion more than terror. The guards expected Evelyn to collapse beneath hopelessness. Instead, she quietly observed everything. Every hallway. Every routine. Every frightened face. Something inside her had changed since the freezing night she met Adrian. She remembered the stranger who shared his only meal, the man who chose compassion before power. That memory became stronger than fear. One elderly accountant sitting alone in the next room whispered that nobody had escaped the estate before. Evelyn smiled gently. Then perhaps someone should try. Over the following day she encouraged the others to remain calm, organized simple routines to keep panic under control, and quietly memorized every opportunity created by changing guard schedules. She shared food equally, comforted frightened strangers, and reminded everyone that surrender began inside the mind long before it appeared anywhere else. She was not a victim. She became emotionally stronger with every passing hour. Even those guarding the estate noticed something unusual. Instead of spreading despair, Evelyn quietly restored hope wherever she walked. Her confidence carried no arrogance, only quiet determination. Without realizing it, she had already begun transforming from a lonely billionaire searching for kindness into the woman capable of leading others through uncertainty. Meanwhile, Victor Romano attempted to disappear beneath new identities and hidden financial accounts. He never reached them. By sunrise, every company, warehouse, investment, and private route secretly controlled by the traitor had vanished from the criminal landscape. His influence dissolved almost overnight as loyal members voluntarily abandoned him. Adrian never needed public punishment. Removing loyalty removed everything. Victor's network simply ceased to exist. Late that evening, Adrian received one final intelligence report. The enemy syndicate had issued a single warning. If the king wants the queen, he must come alone. The command center erupted with objections, but Adrian calmly removed his communication device, placed his weapon on the table, buttoned his black coat, and looked toward the dark coastline stretching beyond the harbor. Without another word, the king of the largest East Coast empire walked alone into enemy territory. The abandoned coastal estate was built to imprison bodies, but Evelyn quickly realized that its true purpose was to imprison hope. Every room carried silent exhaustion, every hallway echoed with uncertainty, and every captive had accepted the belief that rescue would never come. The enemy boss expected wealth to make Evelyn fragile. He assumed that a billionaire who had lived inside luxury would surrender the moment comfort disappeared. Instead, he found someone who quietly challenged every attempt to break her spirit without raising her voice. Each morning, Evelyn greeted the frightened captives with calm confidence instead of despair. She encouraged conversations, reminded them to stay mentally alert, and carefully divided every meal so no one felt forgotten. She listened more than she spoke, earning trust through actions rather than promises. Fear slowly lost its grip on the group because one woman refused to let hopelessness become their future. They began calling her their queen not because of her fortune, but because she carried herself with quiet courage when everyone else struggled to breathe. The rival mafia boss observed her through security monitors, growing more confused every passing hour. He expected demands, tears, or negotiations. Instead, Evelyn asked for books left inside abandoned rooms, encouraged older captives to keep detailed notes of daily routines, and politely thanked even the guards who delivered food. Her confidence unsettled everyone. She was transforming the atmosphere without using force. She became powerful. Not through money or influence, but through resilience that nobody could purchase. Behind her calm smile, Evelyn memorized every detail of the estate. She noticed when lights briefly dimmed during generator changes. She counted footsteps during guard rotations. She watched supply deliveries arrive at nearly identical times every afternoon. Most importantly, she realized one maintenance corridor remained unlocked for only a few minutes each evening. Rather than rushing toward a reckless escape, she quietly organized everyone, assigning simple responsibilities that would create confusion without exposing innocent lives to unnecessary danger. Every decision relied on patience instead of panic. Far beyond the coastline, Adrian Moretti crossed into enemy territory exactly as instructed. Alone, unarmed, and outwardly calm, he walked through towering steel gates while hidden members of his empire silently surrounded the surrounding forests and shoreline from a careful distance. They respected his order not to interfere until the proper moment. Loyalty held the operation together. Every trusted captain understood that their king was risking everything for one woman, and not a single voice questioned his decision. Inside the estate, the rival boss welcomed Adrian with quiet confidence. He believed the meeting had shifted the balance of power forever. Holding Evelyn Carter meant controlling one of America's greatest fortunes while forcing the feared mafia king into impossible negotiations. Yet Adrian's attention never settled on business. His eyes searched only for Evelyn. Moments later she appeared at the far end of the hall. Their eyes met. For a single heartbeat, the entire room disappeared. Evelyn saw exhaustion behind Adrian's composed expression, while Adrian saw something entirely different from the woman he had first met on the freezing streets. The lonely billionaire searching for kindness had become someone stronger. She no longer waited for rescue. She stood with confidence earned through hardship. Then everything changed. The estate's emergency lights suddenly flickered. Exactly as Evelyn had predicted. Several captives quietly followed the plan she had organized. Doors opened simultaneously across different corridors, creating confusion without panic. Security teams rushed toward false alarms while hidden members of Adrian's empire entered the estate through multiple access points. The carefully coordinated rescue unfolded with remarkable precision. The atmosphere filled with urgency rather than chaos as frightened captives were guided safely toward protected exits. Adrian reached Evelyn at last. For one silent moment they stood incredibly close. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. He gently held her hands, making certain she was truly there. "You came," Evelyn whispered, her breath trembling with relief. "I always would," Adrian answered softly. "You are mine to protect." As they moved toward safety, one final danger emerged from an upper balcony. Adrian instinctively stepped between Evelyn and the unexpected threat, shielding her without hesitation. The moment lasted only seconds before his security team secured the area, but Evelyn saw everything that mattered. He had never protected her because of her fortune. He had never cared about her company or influence. He simply valued her life above his own. Tears filled her eyes as the truth settled inside her heart. For the first time, she understood what his quiet promises had always meant. Just as they reached the estate entrance, a slow clap echoed through the grand hallway. An elderly man stepped from the shadows with an unreadable smile. He looked directly at Adrian before calmly revealing the truth that changed everything. "Evelyn Carter was never your enemy's target," he said quietly. "She was always yours." The old man's revelation shattered the fragile silence that followed the rescue. Adrian immediately understood the meaning hidden beneath those carefully chosen words. Evelyn had never been captured simply because she was a billionaire. Long before they met on the frozen streets of New York, Someone had already connected her technology empire to confidential shipping systems used across the East Coast. The enemy had never wanted ransom alone. They wanted the combined collapse of Adrian's empire and Evelyn's corporate influence. Separately, they ruled different worlds. Together, they represented a level of power that terrified everyone hiding in the shadows. Within hours, the invisible war began. The public noticed only unusual delays at shipping ports, temporary communication outages, and unexpected market fluctuations. News channels blamed severe winter weather and technical failures. No journalist realized that beneath those ordinary headlines, rival organizations were battling through intelligence, financial strategy, encrypted networks, and carefully coordinated operations that reshaped the balance of the entire underworld without turning city streets into chaos. The first surprise came from inside Adrian's remaining leadership circle. Another senior advisor secretly switched sides, believing the Moretti empire would collapse under growing pressure. His betrayal was quieter than Victor Romano's but equally dangerous. Instead of reacting with blind anger, Adrian calmly activated contingency plans prepared years earlier. Every sensitive document had duplicate protection. Every financial route contained hidden alternatives. Loyalty had never depended on one individual. His empire survived because trust was earned through discipline rather than fear. Evelyn refused to remain hidden while others fought for her future. Returning to Carter Dynamics, she quietly assembled her most trusted executive team and revealed only the information necessary to protect the company's global infrastructure. Within hours, advanced cybersecurity systems isolated enemy financial networks attempting to manipulate international transfers. Fraudulent accounts disappeared. Hidden transactions froze without warning. Every move was precise, legal, and invisible to ordinary observers. Adrian watched with genuine admiration as Evelyn transformed billion-dollar technology into a shield rather than a weapon. Their partnership changed everything. Adrian's intelligence network uncovered secrets no corporation could reach. Evelyn's technology revealed patterns no mafia organization could detect. Together they quietly dismantled communication channels, exposed secret financing routes, and isolated corrupt business alliances supporting the rival syndicate. Every successful operation reduced the enemy's influence without creating panic among innocent people. It became a contest of patience, strategy, and control rather than reckless destruction. Across the criminal underworld, whispers began spreading. The king has found his queen. No one spoke those words loudly. Everyone respected them. The rival empire slowly collapsed beneath the weight of its own deception. Former allies abandoned failing leadership. Hidden investors quietly withdrew support. Smuggling routes disappeared one after another as legitimate authorities unknowingly interrupted operations already weakened from within. By the time the enemy leaders realized the scale of their defeat, there was almost nothing left to command. Adrian never celebrated publicly. Victory achieved through unnecessary pride often created the next conflict. Instead, he gathered the remaining captains of the Moretti Empire inside the historic harbor headquarters where generations of leaders had shaped its future. Every senior member stood in respectful silence as Adrian entered the room beside Evelyn. Many expected her to remain quietly behind him. She did not. Adrian stopped at the center of the chamber before speaking with calm certainty. "Today our future changes." His voice carried through the hall without effort. This woman protected a stranger before she knew his name. She faced fear without surrender. She inspired loyalty where others expected despair. She strengthened this empire without asking for power. He turned toward Evelyn. "From this day forward, she stands beside me." The announcement stunned even the oldest captains. Not behind him. Beside him. No title had ever carried greater meaning inside the Moretti organization. Evelyn looked around the room, remembering the lonely woman who had wandered New York disguised as someone forgotten. That person still lived inside her, but she no longer defined her future. She was no longer simply someone needing protection. She had become a strategic leader whose compassion balanced Adrian's experience and whose vision strengthened an empire built on discipline rather than intimidation. The captains slowly bowed their heads. One after another. Not because she was wealthy. Because she had earned their respect. Outside, New York continued its ordinary rhythm, completely unaware that one of the greatest criminal conflicts in modern history had ended without headlines, public panic, or recognition. The city slept peacefully because two extraordinary people had chosen wisdom over chaos. Later that evening, Adrian and Evelyn stood alone overlooking the frozen harbor where everything had begun. The winter wind carried familiar silence between them. Adrian gently reached for her hand. His expression held something she had never seen before. Not strategy. Not calculation. Hope. Then, with a quiet smile, the king asked a question that neither war nor wealth could have prepared her for. What if our future isn't just an empire, but a life together? Spring quietly replaced the bitter winter that had changed two extraordinary lives forever. The streets of New York carried their usual rhythm, the skyscrapers reflected the morning sun, and the world celebrated business headlines without realizing that one invisible war had ended months earlier. Peace had finally settled over the Moretti Empire, not because every enemy had disappeared, but because loyalty had become stronger than fear. Adrian no longer ruled through silence alone. Beside him stood Evelyn, not as someone rescued from danger, but as the woman who had earned her place through wisdom, compassion, and unwavering courage. She was not a victim. She became powerful. One quiet evening, Adrian invited Evelyn back to the exact sidewalk where their story had begun. The same stone bench remained beneath the old street lamp, although winter had long disappeared. The city moved around them without recognizing the king and queen sitting together in complete simplicity. Evelyn smiled as she looked toward the familiar corner. "I never imagined this place would become home to my happiest memory," she said softly. Adrian looked down for a long moment before answering. "There was something I never told you." His voice carried the same calm strength she had trusted from the beginning. "When I was 8 years old, I spent 3 days without food. My mother divided her last piece of bread into 2 parts and quietly gave me the larger half. She smiled even though she stayed hungry. Before she passed away, she made me promise one thing." Adrian paused, taking a slow breath. "She told me that no matter how much power I gained, I should never walk past someone whose hunger I could end." Evelyn felt her heart pounding as the memory returned. The sandwich. The freezing night. The gentle whisper. "No one should sleep hungry." "It wasn't just a sentence," Adrian continued quietly. "It was the promise that built everything I became." Evelyn reached for his hand and held it close. "Then it's my turn to tell you the truth," she whispered. She admitted that billions had surrounded her with admiration but had stolen her trust. Every meeting felt rehearsed. Every compliment carried a hidden expectation. She disguised herself because she desperately wanted to discover whether genuine humanity still existed beneath expensive clothes and famous names. She expected disappointment. Instead, she found a man who owned almost nothing in that moment and still shared his only meal. "I wasn't searching for money," she said with tears in her eyes. "I was searching for someone real." Their eyes met. For the first time, both understood that they had been walking toward each other long before fate placed them on the same sidewalk. One had searched for kindness beyond wealth. The other had protected compassion despite unimaginable responsibility. Different journeys had led them to the same answer. Several months later, beneath the quiet lights of a private chapel overlooking the Atlantic, Adrian and Evelyn exchanged simple vows witnessed only by a handful of trusted friends whose loyalty had carried them through every trial. There were no television cameras, no political speeches, and no extravagant celebration. The king chose only one promise. "You will always be safe." The queen smiled before answering with quiet certainty. "And wherever life leads us, I walk beside you." Years passed, yet their greatest achievement was never another company or another victory. Together they quietly established the Carter Moretti Foundation, an organization that officially funded shelters, education, medical research, and community kitchens across America. Every night, thousands of warm meals reached people who believed the world had forgotten them. Volunteers never knew where the anonymous donations originated. No headlines connected the project to America's richest woman or the mysterious shipping billionaire whose influence stretched across the East Coast. The greatest secret remained beautifully simple. Every evening, Adrian and Evelyn personally prepared one final meal before leaving the foundation kitchen. They carefully divided a single sandwich into 2 equal pieces and placed it inside the first food package delivered that night. It reminded them where everything had begun. The world remembered Evelyn Carter as a brilliant billionaire. It remembered Adrian Moretti as an untouchable business legend. No one discovered that the queen and the king who quietly transformed an empire into a force for hope had first recognized each other through half a sandwich shared on a freezing sidewalk. Sometimes the greatest fortunes are not built through money. They begin with compassion. And sometimes the safest place in the world is not behind walls, wealth, or power. It is beside the one heart that quietly whispers, "You are mine, and I will always protect you." Before you go, I'd love to hear what you think. If stories like this remind you that kindness is still the greatest form of strength, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe because the next story might stay with you even longer than this one. Now here's the question I can't stop thinking about. If you were Evelyn on that freezing night, would you have trusted the stranger in the black coat, or walked away forever? And if you were Adrian, would you have revealed your true identity, or protected the secret until the very end? Tell me your answer in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious to see how many of you would have made the same choice.